The lights in the studio were low, the production clean, and Candace Owens' voice cut through the silence like a blade dipped in ice. "Let's talk about integrity," she said, locking eyes with the camera as if she were speaking to each viewer directly. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has made a career out of playing the victim. But what if the real story is darker? What if the people cheering her on don't realize they're being played by a foreign-funded puppet? Behind her, graphics exploded across the screen, screenshots, clips, statements, moments taken from context and stitched into a sinister mosaic. A payment from a PAC, a vague connection to a European advisory board, a quick flash of Jasmine at a diplomatic gala overseas. Then the crescendo. "I'm not saying she's a traitor to American values." Owens smiled. "But if the shoe fits..." It aired at 11:07 p.m. By 11:30, it had 2.4 million views. By midnight, #Crockett Exposed was trending. Phones began ringing in Congresswoman Crockett's D.C. townhouse. Staffers called, confused and panicked, her aide. Devin was the first to break protocol and barge into her reading room. "You need to see this," he said, holding his phone like it was a live grenade. Jasmine Crockett, seated under the soft glow of a floor lamp, looked up slowly. She had been reading Baldwin. "The fire next time," the cover read. She took the phone. She watched every frame, every lie, every subtle implication meant to tarnish, not challenge. For a moment, she said nothing. Devin paced. "We can tweet a statement, denounce it. Maybe do a live stream. Push back before it picks up in the morning cycle." "No," Jasmine said, eyes still on the screen. "Don't fight mud with mud, so we just ignore it." Another aide piped in from the hallway. "Because that's going to look like we're hiding something. Candace Owens just accused you of selling out your country." "She accused me of rising too far, too fast," Jasmine replied, voice cold but measured. "She accused every black woman in power of being illegitimate. That's what this is." Outside, the wind was picking up, rustling the American flag pinned above her porch. Devin stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You take this to court, Jasmine, and it becomes everything. The Hill, the Senate, even the Supreme Court. Fox will spin it as a war on free speech. Your donors will flinch. You could lose re-election." Jasmine set the phone down on her desk, leaned back and let the silence hang. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "She's not just defaming me. She's defaming every woman like me who dared to rise." And with that, the storm began. Not on Twitter, not on cable news. But in the quiet corners of a woman's resolve. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a folder marked Civil Complaint Template, and stared at the blank front page. Her reflection caught faintly in the glossy plastic. "Across town," Candace Owens tweeted triumphantly. "If she sues me, it'll prove everything I said." "Let's go." But Jasmine didn't tweet, didn't post, didn't perform. She signed her name. The morning sun spilled cold light across the steps of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. A sea of reporters, cameras, and flashing lights pressed forward as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett emerged, poised and unyielding. Her legal team flanked her, Elena Vargas, sharp-eyed and resolute, clutching the hefty folder that now carried the weight of a nation's gaze. Crockett's voice, steady and clear, cut through the clamoring crowd. "I am here to stand not just for myself," she declared, "but for every woman, every person, every voice diminished by lies masquerading as truth." Behind her, staffers hurried, setting up press tents and arranging banners. Social media feeds exploded. Hashtags like #Justice for Jasmine, #Truth Matters, and the counterattack #Free Speech under fire battled for dominance. Inside the courthouse, legal experts buzzed in hushed tones. Some called it a landmark case. Others predicted it would ignite a constitutional debate over free speech's limits. News networks scrambled for exclusive interviews, eager to frame the story on their terms. Candace Owens, far removed from the courthouse scene, sat in a sleek studio bathed in blue light. Her tone was defiant, practiced. "This is nothing but a stunt," she said, fingers tapping the desk. "They want to weaponize the courts to silence dissent." Back on the courthouse steps, a young reporter pressed Crockett. "Congresswoman, Some say this lawsuit risks making you a martyr for cancel culture. What do you say to that? Jasmine's eyes didn't waver. Free speech is not a shield. For lies, this is about accountability. The truth must have a defender. Behind the scenes, Elena conferred with the legal team. The filing is solid, she whispered, checking her notes. We've got documented harm, endorsements lost, public threats, damage to her career. This is more than reputation. This is personal. Meanwhile, on social media, Owens supporters unleashed a torrent of memes and hashtags mocking the Congresswoman. Hashtag Snowflake SUES trended within hours, and the lines between political allegiance and personal attack blurred dangerously. But Crockett's resolve hardened. That evening, as she returned home, the glow from her phone screen was relentless threats. Messages of support, heated debates flooding her notifications. Her mother called, voice cracking with concern. Why are you doing this, Jasmine? You're already under so much pressure. Is it worth it? Jasmine stood on her balcony, gazing at the city lights. Because if I don't, who will? If lies win, the truth becomes the next casualty. Her hand gripped the railing tight. The war had moved from the shadows of whispers to the bright glare of the legal battlefield. The courtroom was set. The players in place. And America was watching. The morning news cycle was a battlefield, and the war was raging. On one side, networks aired Candace Owens' incendiary clips, dissecting every word, every smirk. She's an outspoken voice for millions, an anchor proclaimed, and this lawsuit threatens the very fabric of free expression. On the other, the airwaves pulsed with praise for Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's courage, a beacon for truth. In a landscape littered with misinformation. This is about holding the powerful accountable, a commentator declared. And Crockett's lawsuit may set a precedent no one saw coming. Social media, the virtual coliseum, exploded in division. The hashtags #justice for Jasmine and #free speech at risk clashed relentlessly. Friendships fractured. Families argued behind screens. Political pundits fueled the fire, turning the courtroom battle into a cultural war. But beneath the roar of the crowd, Jasmine Crockett faced a quieter, more insidious pressure. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages slid between hope and hatred. Death threats seeped through encrypted apps, chilling her staff. The protective veil of her public persona thinned. One afternoon, Jasmine's mother arrived unexpectedly, her face lined with worry. Child, this isn't just a court case anymore. It's a public spectacle. Your safety. Jasmine held up a hand, firm but tender. Mom, I know what I'm facing, her mother's eyes glistened. But sometimes the fight outside is harder than the one inside. Later, alone in her office, Jasmine stared at the framed photograph on her desk, a snapshot of her family, her roots, her reason. The weight of expectation pressed down, but so did the flicker of defiance. Devin, her chief of staff, paced in the background. We need to get ahead of this narrative, he urged. Maybe a live stream. Let the public see you strong. Calm. Jasmine shook her head. No, they don't just want my voice, they want my reaction. I won't give them the spectacle. Let the court speak. As night fell, the city hummed outside her window, but inside, a quiet battle raged. Jasmine knew this was bigger than a courtroom or a tweet. It was about truth, and who gets to decide it. Meanwhile, miles away, Candace Owens prepared her next broadcast, eyes fierce, voice resolute. They want to silence me, but I'm not afraid because truth is on my side. The echo chambers grew louder, but Jasmine's silence held steady, a calm before the storm. The courtroom buzzed with a brittle tension, as subpoenas were served and documents exchanged in the sterile halls of justice. Elena Vargas moved with precision, her eyes sharp beneath the heavy overhead lights as she sifted through digital records and email chains that could break the case wide open. Inside a cramped conference room, Elena gathered her legal team around. A cluttered table stacked with laptops and file folders. We've got a lead, she announced, voice low but urgent. An internal memo from Owens' production team warned her repeatedly, before the segment aired, that the story lacked solid evidence. One of the junior attorneys frowned. But the key email, deleted, Elena confirmed, her tone grim. It vanished from the servers just days after the controversy exploded. The team exchanged looks. This wasn't mere sloppiness. It smelled like deliberate destruction of evidence. Elena's phone buzzed. A confidential informant whispered, "There's more notes from meetings where Owens' producers planned the segment knowing it would be incendiary. They wanted the fallout." Back in her office, Jasmine Crockett sat across from Elena, absorbing the gravity of the findings. "So this wasn't an accident." "It was planned," Jasmine said quietly. Elena nodded. "This changes everything. Proving intent means we're not just arguing defamation. We're exposing a calculated attack on your character." Outside the courthouse, Owens' legal team countered with bureaucratic footwork, motions to dismiss, claims of executive privilege, and endless requests for extensions. The courtroom became a chessboard. Every move met with a countermove. Meanwhile, media outlets caught wind of the missing emails. Headlines screamed, "Smoke and mirrors, did Candace Owens delete key evidence?" Candace, in her private suite, stared at her phone as the story spread. Her smile faded. Advisors urged calm, but inside, the stakes were climbing higher than anyone expected. Elena pressed on. "If we can get the jury to see this as a deliberate act, it's game over for Owens." Jasmine clenched her fists. "Then let's make sure the truth doesn't get buried." That night, alone in her apartment, Jasmine stared at the city skyline. Through the rain-streaked window, the legal battle was no longer just about words. It was a war on integrity itself. The discovery had opened a door, and there was no turning back. The political arena erupted like a powder keg. Headlines blazed across every news ticker. GOP demands Crockett's resignation. #resign Crockett trends nationwide. Free speech under siege. The cacophony wasn't just media hype, it was a calculated campaign to crush Jasmine. Crockett's resolve. In a cavernous GOP press room, party leaders sharpened their rhetoric. "She's weaponizing the courts," a senior strategist spat, eyes cold. "This lawsuit is a dangerous precedent. If we allow it, any political speech can be silenced." Across the Capitol, Crockett sat quietly in her office, surrounded by framed photos of her family and moments of triumph. Her phone buzzed endlessly with messages, some supportive, others hostile. Her aide, Devin, paced anxiously. "The pressure is mounting. Fox News just gave Owens a primetime special. The Senate invited her to testify as a free speech champion. This isn't just a lawsuit anymore, it's a political battle." Jasmine lifted her gaze, steady and unyielding. "They want me to scream, to get angry, to make this a spectacle." Devin stopped, searching her eyes. "So what do you want to do?" She paused, voice low but fierce. "Let the courtroom be my voice. I won't give them the soundbite they crave." Meanwhile, Owens, energized by the momentum, took to the Senate committee hearing with the poise of a warrior. Cameras rolled as she framed herself as a defender of the First Amendment, rallying conservatives behind her cause. Backstage, behind closed doors, Owens' legal counsel reminded her, "This trial isn't just about you. It's about the entire conservative movement." The stakes soared higher. Social media exploded with battle cries on both sides. The nation felt like a house divided, its walls shaking. That evening, Crockett met with community leaders in a dimly lit church basement, seeking strength from the roots of her own journey. "This fight is bigger than me," she told them. "It's about truth in an age of lies. About the power of courage when fear tries to win." As she left, the rain began to fall, washing the streets of the city, but not the fire in her heart. The political fire raged on, and Jasmine Crockett stood in its center. Unburned, yet fiercely determined, the grand federal courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Journalists jostled for position, their cameras blinking like stars in the dim light. Protesters and supporters lined the corridors, their chants spilling through the heavy oak doors. Jasmine Crockett entered with measured grace, her face a mask of quiet determination. Elena Vargas, her lead attorney, whispered last-minute advice as they approached the bench. On the opposite side, Candace Owens strode in, flanked by high-profile legal counsel and a cadre of aides, radiating defiance. The judge, a stern figure cloaked in black robes, called the room to order. His voice cut through the murmur like a bell tolling. This court will not be your stage for political theater. But here you will answer to the law. The jurors, a diverse group, carefully selected, took their seats with solemn expressions. The air was thick with anticipation. Opening arguments began. Owens' lawyer launched a fierce attack, framing the lawsuit as a threat to free speech and political debate. Ms. Owens did not defame Ms. Crockett. She exercised her constitutional right to express opinion. Elena rose with calm authority. This case is not about stifling speech. It's about accountability. When falsehoods are broadcast to millions and when reputations are destroyed by lies, the law must intervene. Throughout, cameras caught the subtle exchanges between Owens and Crockett. Eyes locked, unblinking, tension crackling like electricity. As the day progressed, the courtroom became a crucible where legal precision met raw emotion. Every phrase carried weight, every pause a potential turning point. Outside, media analysts debated what the opening day meant. Was Crockett's strategy of composed dignity winning hearts? Or was Owens' portrayal as a free speech martyr swaying public opinion? That evening, as the courtroom emptied, Jasmine whispered to Elena, "They want a fight. I'll give them justice." The lines were drawn. The battle for truth was just beginning. The courtroom hushed as Jasmine Crockett took the stand. The weight of every eye in the room pressed down, but she stood tall, calm, collected, unwavering. Her voice carried not just facts, but the soul of her struggle. "I am more than a politician," she began, looking directly at the jury. "I am a daughter, a mother, a servant of the people. But when lies are spread about me, it's not just my reputation at stake, it's the trust between elected officials and those they represent." She recounted the aftermath of Owens' broadcast, lost endorsements, broken alliances, even death threats. The damage is real, it's deep, and it's personal. Owens' attorneys launched into their cross-examination with relentless precision, trying to trip her up. "Congresswoman Crockett, do you not fear that suing Ms. Owens could be seen as a threat to free speech?" Jasmine's reply was sharp, silencing. "I am fighting to protect free speech, the kind rooted in truth, not weaponized falsehoods." A charged silence filled the room. When pressed about political motives, Jasmine leaned forward. "This is not politics. This is principle." Across the room, Owens watched, her face unreadable. The tension was palpable. A courtroom not just for legal arguments, but for a moral reckoning. As Jasmine stepped down, a single juror, a young black woman, caught her eye. There was understanding there, a quiet acknowledgement of the stakes far beyond the courtroom walls. Outside, the nation waited with bated breath for Jasmine Crockett. This was the crossroads, and her next steps would echo far beyond this trial. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as Candace Owens stood to take the witness stand, her presence commanding immediate attention. The media's focal point, she projected confidence wrapped in defiance, a woman who had mastered the art of controlling the narrative. "I am here not as a villain, but as a defender of free speech," Owens began, her voice steady, eyes flashing with conviction. "Millions of Americans are tired of being told what to think, what to say, and who to support. My commentary is their voice." Her opening statement sent ripples through the courtroom, electrifying conservative supporters watching live broadcasts. While Crockett's camp braced for the assault, but under cross-examination, the veneer began to crack. Elena Vargas leaned forward, voice calm but piercing. "Ms. Owens, are you aware of internal communications warning that your segment on Congresswoman Crockett lacked factual basis?" Owens hesitated for the briefest moment. A flicker of tension passed over her face before she responded, "I rely on my sources and judgment." Elena pressed, sliding a document across the table. "This is an email from your production team, dated weeks before the broadcast, cautioning about unverified claims." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Owen's smile faltered, fingers tightening around the edge of the stand. The jury took note. The atmosphere shifted. Her narrative of victimhood wavered under the weight of the evidence. Owens fought to maintain control, asserting, "The story sparked debate. Isn't that what free speech is about? Elena's final question was surgical, or is it about spreading intentional misinformation? Silence. Candace Owens sat back, the room heavy with unspoken truths. Outside, pundits dissected every moment. The battle lines weren't just drawn, they were being redrawn. The crisp hum of newsroom computers was punctuated by an urgent, buzzing anonymous leak had just landed on the desks of top political reporters. The story spread like wildfire. Months before the trial, Candace Owens' legal team had seriously considered settling the defamation claim quietly, but the offer was withdrawn. Inside a dimly lit office, Elena Vargas leaned forward over her keyboard, reading through the leaked emails and confidential memos. One message stood out: settle quietly to avoid public fallout. Risk too high otherwise. Across town, Owens' private legal counsel paced nervously in a sleek conference room. If this goes criminal, the lawyer warned, voice low, this isn't just about reputation, it's about freedom. We're not just protecting a brand anymore, we're fighting for survival. Owens herself sat silently, scrolling through the mounting headlines. Her usual fire flickered uneasily. Back in her apartment, Jasmine Crockett listened to a late-night news report recounting the leak's implications. Her expression was unreadable, but her staff sensed a shift. This goes beyond a civil suit now, her closest aide murmured. We're fighting a political war, not just a legal one. Jasmine's gaze hardened. Then we need to be ready for every battlefront. Outside, the political world spun faster. The leak fractured Owens' image among moderates, invigorated Crockett's supporters, and sent shockwaves through Washington. Social media exploded with renewed debates. The stakes exploded beyond dollars and defamation. It was now about truth, power, and survival. Alone, late into the night, Jasmine whispered into the quiet room. They wanted a scandal. They got a reckoning. The war was no longer behind closed doors. It was public, brutal, unrelenting, and neither side could afford to blink. Washington, D.C. pulsed with unrest as crowds spilled into the streets. Protesters waving signs rallied on one side of the Capitol, chanting for justice and accountability. Across the plaza, counter-demonstrators held their ground, shouting slogans about free speech and government overreach. The trial had morphed into a cultural battleground. College campuses across the nation streamed the courtroom proceedings live, sparking heated discussions in dorm rooms and lecture halls. Late-night talk shows wove the trial's themes into their monologues, while social media exploded with viral clips and fiery debates. Inside a modest church auditorium, civil rights leaders gathered to show solidarity with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The air was thick with resolve and history as pastors, activists, and community organizers shared stories of fighting for truth in the face of adversity. Jasmine's father, a retired preacher with a voice trembling yet resolute, stepped to the microphone. She was raised to speak truth even when it shakes the very foundations of the earth, he said, his eyes scanning the crowd. The room erupted in applause, the moment immortalized on thousands of smartphones. Meanwhile, conservative pundits doubled down on their criticism, framing Crockett as a victim of political theatrics. Candace Owens posted a cryptic tweet: "They don't want truth. They want silence." Backstage, Crockett absorbed the weight of public opinion, both the cheers and the jeers. Her phone vibrated with messages of support but also chilling threats that underscored the personal cost of this battle. That night, alone in her study, Jasmine stared out at the city lights, the hum of Washington a distant chorus. She whispered to herself, "This isn't just about me. It's about what kind of country we want to be." The public reckoning had begun, not only in courtrooms, but in the hearts and minds of a divided nation. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence as Owens' former producer took the stand, visibly nervous. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the microphone, eyes darting between the judge and attorneys. I was part of the team that produced the segment on Congresswoman Crockett," he began, voice shaky but growing firmer. "There were objections raised internally, concerns that the story was unverified, that it could be misleading." A ripple passed through the courtroom. Elena Vargas pressed him gently. Did you ever voice those concerns to Ms. Owens or others in the production? He swallowed hard. Yes, but the segment aired anyway. Despite the warnings. Owens sat stone-faced, jaw clenched, refusing to meet his eyes. The prosecution's momentum surged. Was it clear to you that the intent was to create a viral, explosive story, regardless of factual accuracy? The producer nodded reluctantly. Yes, it was understood that the controversy would drive viewership. Murmurs erupted in the packed courtroom. The jury exchanged glances, the gravity of the testimony sinking in. Outside, media analysts declared the testimony a turning point. Social media exploded with debates over journalistic ethics and the weaponization of misinformation. Candace Owens' legal team appeared shaken but regrouped quickly, attempting damage control with rehearsed statements about journalistic freedom and opinion. Inside, Jasmine Crockett exhaled deeply, eyes steady. Elena squeezed her hand. This is the moment. The truth cracks through. The collapse of Owens' defenses was no longer hypothetical. It was real. The courtroom had become a crucible where lies and truths clashed, and the scales of justice began to tip. The heavy wooden doors of the deliberation room closed with a solemn finality. Inside, 12 strangers, each carrying their own histories, biases, and moral compasses, sat around a polished oval table, the weight of the nation's gaze resting silently on their shoulders. Among them, a young African-American woman named Maya glanced at the others, her expression thoughtful yet guarded. She knew that their decision would ripple far beyond these walls, shaping how truth and power collided in America. Minutes turned into hours. Words were weighed carefully, silence filled spaces between heated debate, and private doubts crept behind. Resolute faces, one juror, an older white man, spoke first. We can't let this be about politics. It's about whether falsehoods caused real harm. A middle-aged woman nodded. But what about the freedom to speak? Where do we draw the line? Maya's voice cut through the murmurs. If truth becomes optional, then what protects us from manipulation? This isn't just about two women in a courtroom, it's about the future of accountability. Outside, the nation waited anxiously. News outlets speculated, pundits debated, and social media buzzed with predictions and opinions. Back in the room, the jurors wrestled with the facts, their personal shadows, intertwining with the legal ones. Each struggled to balance empathy with law, belief with evidence. As night deepened, the jurors began to lean toward consensus, but the tension remained palpable. In the quiet moments, Maya caught her reflection in the polished table, a silent reminder that in the balance of justice, they were the last arbiters. The verdict would soon be more than words. It would be a message, a choice, a reckoning.